A lot has changed since we last were on Sports Talk Philadelphia. For one, you've got a new host. And while one team's season has ended, two teams have kicked off their 2024 campaigns. We'll cover that and more on this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. You have a new host today. My name is Tyler Farmer, and I have a full panel with me to my left. We're going to start off with my guy, Tyler Waiter. Tyler, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Good, good, good. And then next to him is Kevin Gamlin. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing good, doing good. And then on the far end, we've got Chris Gress. How you doing, my guy?
Doing good, fellas. Ready to talk some ball.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think it's just going to be easier to get the hard part out of the way, and that is the Philadelphia Phillies, whose season unfortunately ended at the hands of the New York Mets. So to recap what happened in the NLDS, the Mets ended up winning the series 3-1 over the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies offense did not show up. They only scored 12 runs throughout the entire series. And this is the first time that the Phillies have gone one and done in the playoffs since 2011. So definitely not the outcome that we were hoping for. Definitely very disappointing. High hopes for this team. So it's very disappointing to see this team's season end so soon. Tyler, what are your thoughts about what you saw?
Yeah, obviously very disappointing. It seems like year after year they're regressing. You make it to the World Series, then you don't make it out of the Championship Series, and now the DS. It's reminiscent of back when they had Utley and Howard and went to the World Series and then just CS and DS. Very disappointing, and I don't know where they go from here.
Right. Kevin, I know, we talk about this offense. We talk about how, they needed to get the hits going in this series, and they just could never get it going. What were your thoughts on what you saw?
Yeah, 3 runs per game. Not the best, and like Tyler said, they are regressing. You've seen it. They had the World Series, then they made it to the Championship Series last year against the Diamondbacks, and then the fall off has been bad. And the expectations were really high going into this year's playoffs. Like, they were the 2 seed, they had the bye, and then you run into the Mets and you just lose 3-1 in the series, which was very unexpected.
Right. Absolutely. Chris, what were your thoughts going on watching that series?
Yeah, more of the same as Kevin and Tyler already alluded to. Just they didn't want it as bad as the Mets did. The Mets, came out and played their game way better than the Phillies played theirs. Not really going to make any excuses. The Mets just beat them, and it was tough to see. But only way to go from here is up, because can't get much worse.
Right. I think when you have a team with high expectations, and when you see them fall short in the manner that the Phillies did, there's so many things that I think you can point to. You could point to execution. You could point to coaching. You could point to upper front office, upper management. Guys, Tyler, I'm going to start with you. Where do you think the Phillies go from here? What steps need to be taken in order for them to reach the level of expectation that we have for this team?
Yeah. Speaking of management, they did announce their coaching staff is coming back, so that's not going to change. The obvious choice for me is the roster itself. There are guys that can be moved, I think, especially with at their highest, to get the most out of the guys in the trade package. I think some drastic things need to happen, because you're seeing the Dodgers, who are, in my opinion, a depleted team, and they still kind of rolled over the Mets. So if you want to compete in the future, you're going to have to make some big changes. A couple of guys, you're not getting rid of Harper, guys like that, but a couple of these guys, I think, they can make changes to the outfield, bulk up the bullpen, and just come into next season really wanting it because the Mets just wanted it more this year.
Right, right. Kevin, where do you think this team goes from here?
Yeah, I agree with Tyler. I mean, you could get rid of the likes of Bohm or Stott or someone like that who maybe didn't have the best year stat-wise, but I would say even if you run it back, like it's going to be another long season and it drags out a little bit. So, like honestly, if I were them, I'd be really mad that you didn't take care of business. But yeah, you got to get ready for next year and make the roster moves that you feel like you need to.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And Chris, what are your thoughts on what's next for this team?
More of the same, but this same group they've ran it back in 23, they ran it back this year, and unfortunately didn't work out. I'm fine with them keeping Thompson due to the fact that before him there was a 10-year-long drought, and once they brought him in, the Phillies have been the best they've been in a long time. But as far as the actual roster, I agree. There definitely needs to be some shakeups, especially, as Kevin already sort of alluded to, but Alec Bohm at third base, brutal series, brutal attitude. Would like to see them move off of him. Don't know how realistic it is, just due to the fact that Miller's probably a year or two away. Don't really know how much better you can get because he did start at third base in the All-Star game, but when it mattered, you could just tell he was not in it. His body language was not great, and his attitude, you could just tell he folded, and it just was tough to see.
Right. And we've talked a lot about the players. We've talked a lot about the execution or lack thereof throughout the series. How about the coaching staff and the front office guys? Tyler, I'll start with you. Do you think this is the coaching staff and front office? Do you believe that these guys, do you trust them to lead this team going forward?
I do. You kind of have to with them bringing them back, but I do. I mean, we saw them take them to the World Series in 22, and they're making playoff runs now, hopefully for years to come. The front office, up in the front office, gives me a little hesitation, not making better moves at the deadline, because that's where a lot of teams like the Dodgers, they picked up a guy like Tommy Edman at the deadline, which really, he won the NLCS MVP. So they need to do something in the offseason, next trade deadline, in order to give me a better sense of hope in going forward.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Kevin, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything Tyler said as well. I think you really can't disagree with the roster or the coaching moves because Thompson's here to stay, and they announced that he was coming back. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to do what they feel like is best for the roster, and hopefully it pans out.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see where this team goes forward. But we're going to move on to some more positive news now, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles. So looking at the last two games, the Eagles won their last two games. They beat the Browns 20-16, and then last Sunday they throttled the Giants 28-3. Jalen Hurts has been excellent in these two games. He's had 5 total touchdowns, hasn't turned the ball over, and then this Eagles defense has really come on strong. 13 sacks in the last 2 games. Tyler, I'll start with you. What difference have you seen in this team over the last 2 games that we probably didn't see in the first 4 games?
Number one is obviously the turnovers. You make 0 turnovers, you're going to have a good chance at winning ball games. Now the opponents haven't been top tier. The Browns are kind of limped into that game, but having 2 wins in a row in the National Football League is huge, no matter who you go against. And if they can stay healthy, make plays, having Brown and Smith back is huge, and just continue to get better. The sacks are obviously huge. The defense needs to continue to show up every week, and hopefully that's a formula for success in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. Kevin, what do you think about what you've seen these last few games?
Yeah, I mean, there is no easy games like Tyler said, but at the end of the day, you were playing against Daniel Jones and the Giants, Deshaun Watson and the Browns, arguably 2 of the worst 5 teams in the NFL. So, I mean, but the pressure's been there. The defensive pass rush's been there. Hurts played good, so that's a positive sign. And you look at the NFC East standings, and they're only 1 game behind Washington, so that's not bad at all. But big game this week against Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and we'll see how the Eagles secondary can do it.
Absolutely, definitely will be a big game. Chris, what have you seen from this team that has contributed to these last 2 wins?
Yeah, well, luckily, although the opponents they've played aren't top tier by any means, but the Eagles, for the most part, these past few games have been just about full strength. And the big name I want to hit on is, of course, A.J. Brown. Clearly, he's seeming to be the most impactful player for this offense. And that touchdown he had, man, beautiful ball, beautiful catch. Hopefully, we'll just get more of the same from that. Lane was back the past few weeks. Devontae was back. Their impacts were clearly on display. And just having your main guys back is obviously big, and I think that's been the real big key to them securing these last 2 victories.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as Kevin alluded to, we have a big game coming up against the Cincinnati Bengals. And as we take a look at my apologies, let's look at the NFC East standings actually first. So the Commanders right now, they hold the division lead by half a game over Philadelphia at 5-2, Eagles at 4-2, Cowboys at 3-3, and then the Giants sitting at 2-5. Tyler, I'll start with you quickly. The Commanders seem to be the only team right now that are in the way of the Eagles capturing a division title. Who do you think is the better team right now?
I'm going to say the Eagles slightly, and that is based on how they played recently, and also take into account the Jaden Daniels injury. Depending on how long he's out, the Eagles can leapfrog the Commanders. That will be huge, but it's going to be the Eagles and then right behind the Commanders.
Right, absolutely. And then now we will look at the upcoming schedule. So as Kevin alluded to, Week 8 they'll go to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Week 9 they host Jacksonville at 4:05, and then Week 10 they're at Dallas. That's a 4:25 kickoff. Kevin, I'm gonna go to you. How important is it for them to get this game against the Bengals, who are step up in competition?
I think you got to get this game with Washington. Like Tyler said, Jaden Daniels hurt, but odds are he'll play against Caleb Williams and the Bears, so that's going to be a tough game. But the Bengals are hot, so you got to try and take them out and run the ball with Saquon, continue to do that, and the Eagles could be fine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Chris, what are your thoughts about this game?
Oh, yeah, obviously it's huge. A win would obviously be ideal, keep the momentum rolling. But on the road, it's hard to beat any team. I do think the Eagles are going to win, but maybe closer than some people expect.
Absolutely, absolutely. Definitely will be an interesting matchup that we have against the Bengals. So now we're going to move on to the Philadelphia Flyers, who they haven't really had the best of starts. They're struggling out the gate. Currently, they sit at 1-4-1. On the bright side, Mitch Gove, the rookie, he leads the team in points, goals, and assists. Their next game is actually tonight. They're in Washington to take on the Capitals at 7:30. I guess we'll start with Mitch Gove, who I guess has been a positive amidst the struggles that the team has faced overall. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the young man as we've started this season?
I can't say enough about him. He looks amazing out there, and that's about the only amazing thing out there on the ice right now. Because obviously, yeah, they won, I believe it was that first game, and they have just not looked good since. I think he got 2 goals against the Oilers. They were up 2-0, and they let that lead get away. So they don't look good right now at all. But if they can take a picture out of Mitch Gove's book and just kind of follow him, hopefully they get a couple wins together and get this thing going.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Chris, on the end, watching this team, did you expect them to start out this slow? Did you expect them to play a little bit better? What are your thoughts about this?
Tyler, I definitely didn't expect them to lose 5 out of their first 6. Especially Michkov looked the part. He's been great. No complaints on his end, but every other area of the team, it's hard not to complain. In net, they've had trouble. Their defense has been iffy. They can't score efficiently on the power play. Just really, I did not expect them at all to start this way. I thought they'd be more hovering the 500 mark, possibly a little bit better, but very disappointed with how the season started.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tyler, I'll ask you next. They are in Washington tonight to play the Capitals. What are your thoughts about this game? Maybe a prediction? What do you think happens tonight?
Playing on a back-to-back, they got crushed. Didn't look good against them, so I hope they don't lose 2 in a row to the Caps. I'll say they win 5-3. Yeah, they just got to be better in every facet of the game. You know, and the goalie, Ersson needs to show me something that he can be the #1 goalie for, you know, the majority of the season. Otherwise, you know, they need to look at some other options. And I don't know where they go if they continue to lose like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Chris, any final thoughts about this game?
Yeah, a similar sentiment to Tyler. I do believe they'll win, strictly because, you know, they got destroyed last night against the exact same team, back-to-back. Hopefully they can just split this little 2-game series. I know there's not series in hockey, but hopefully they can get it done, and I do believe they will.
Absolutely, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them tonight. We're now going to move on to the Sixers, and unfortunately, while there's excitement surrounding the upcoming season, the Sixers right now are dealing with, you guessed it, injuries. Paul George is dealing with a bone bruise injury. Tyrese Maxey jammed his finger. Jared McCain right now has a pulmonary contusion following a scary fall, all suffered in the preseason. Joel Embiid is managing that knee injury. He says he's not expected to play in back-to-back games throughout the season. The Sixers open up tonight at the Bucks tonight at 7:30. Tyler, this team is shorthanded, at least for the start of the season. Why us? I guess this is why us?
Why us is right. Man, I was so excited to get into the Sixers season with the depressing end to the Phillies, and it's just more of the same. We're Philly sports suffers over here. And, you know, you hope Paul George isn't out too long. You already know the deal with Joel Embiid. He's not going to be playing 82 games a season. And obviously not playing back-to-backs. I didn't see that as much of a big deal as everybody else did because he hasn't been playing back-to-backs in recent years anyway. And what you want is you want him ready for the postseason. So if he can play somewhere between 50, 60 games and he can be somewhat healthy for the postseason, I just want one postseason with a healthy Joel Embiid, and I think we can take on the Knicks and the Celtics and hopefully get us to the promised land.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kevin, I'll go to you with this. Do you think all these early injuries, how much of a concern is the early chemistry with this team, knowing that Paul George is not going to be here early, Joel Embiid's going to be in and out of the lineup? How concerned are you about the chemistry?
I mean, yeah, it's very concerning. Boston's got a great team. The Knicks got a great team. The Bucks got a great team, and they're all healthy right now, and then the Sixers are not. So it's just you got to get that chemistry going, and especially like during the playoffs, like even if Embiid plays 50 games, just is he going to be ready for the postseason is huge, and what seed will they have? Like you got to play some of these regular season games, even if it's just a couple back-to-backs. I feel like he still could play. Absolutely,
that chemistry is important. Chris, we saw the Celtics last night. They just were raining threes on the Knicks, and if we can't expect them to be like that, 29 threes a game, but to just watch them play the way they played, what do the Sixers do? Like, how do the Sixers beat this team, especially in a 7-game series? How do you finally get over this hump after watching last night?
That's a great question. It's one I've been asking myself for the past, however many years we've had Embiid and going against the Celtics. But I think with this group, the way you're going to be able to beat Boston is just Embiid, essentially. Not many players, pretty much no one in the league can guard Embiid. And the Celtics, as good as they are, I truly believe Embiid would still give them the work. As far as actually beating them, it's going to be hard. I mean, at full strength, I think the Sixers definitely have a good shot with Paul George, Maxey, obviously, one of the best big threes in basketball. But it's going to be tough to beat them, and I don't see a way right now that they'll be able to in the playoffs, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
But we'll see how it plays out. It's definitely going to be a long season and a hard-fought season, but we'll see how it plays out.
Absolutely. Now we're going to take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Sixers. So as we stated tonight, they open up against the Bucks. Then October 25th, they're at Toronto at 7 o'clock. And then October 27th, they're at Indiana. That'll be a 3:30 tip-off. Tyler, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts about these next 3 games? What do you see the Sixers doing?
Going 3-0. You can't do anything than start hot out of the gate, in my opinion. The Bucks obviously don't have Chris Middleton. Even though they don't have Embiid and Paul George, I think Maxey is just going to do more of the same that he's been doing and continuing to grow and hopefully lead this team. I don't think any of these teams are going to give the Sixers too much of a problem. Obviously, the Pacers are a good team. They made the playoffs last year. But I want to, like you said, see kind of how they gel in this first couple games here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kevin, record prediction for these first 3 games?
I'm going 1-2. I think they beat Toronto, but yeah, this Milwaukee's team's pretty loaded, and you're not playing Embiid against them, so Giannis is going to have a field day. And then I think Tyrese Halliburton might get the better of Maxey. The Pacers, after going to the Eastern Conference Finals, will beat the Sixers, but it's the start of the season.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as far as these first 3, I'll go different. I'll go 2-1. I think they win tonight. I think Toronto, for some reason, I don't know why, I think they lose to Toronto, and I think they beat Indiana. Sixers weirdly will get up for these games in the beginning of the season. A big storyline for me is going to be Andre Drummond because he's most likely going to start these first few games. Hopefully he rebounds like he always does, plays hard because he's going to be big down the line.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll go 2-1 as well. So now we're going to get into our favorite segment, which is the Fast Five. We're going to start with you on the end, Chris. What are your thoughts on the Yankees and Dodgers for the World Series?
Yeah, I think baseball won. Major League Baseball is going to make a ton of money from this World Series. It's 2 teams from the biggest market. As a Philly fan, I am not the biggest fan of this series for obvious reasons, but it's a great series, 2 elite teams. Judge and Ohtani, arguably the 2 best players in the sport, going head-to-head. As far as a prediction, I'm going to lean Dodgers. I'm going to go Dodgers in 6. I like their lineup a little bit better. I like their bullpen a little bit better. But even if you're just a regular baseball fan or a casual viewer, I would recommend viewing this series because it's going to be a great one and it should come down. I got Dodgers in 6, but I could totally see it going 7 and the Yankees winning. It could go either way.
Absolutely. It definitely should be an interesting series. So now we'll get on to the next question, which is about the Philadelphia Eagles and the confidence level in them after watching them win these last 2 games. If I were to go on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to go about a 6 or a 7. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think they found their identity, which is really important. Their identity, run the football with Saquon, with Hurts, and, limit the amount of times Hurts has to throw. Defensively, their defensive front is starting to look dominant. Yes, it's against lesser opponents, but 13 sacks is 13 sacks. And I think that's something that's important to point out as well. We can't get too ahead of ourselves. Cincinnati is a step up in competition as well. 2 and then 3 weeks from now, you're going to be playing Dallas. You'll have Washington down the stretch. So you still got some big games coming up where you're really going to have to prove yourself. But I do believe that this team is at the very least taking steps in the right direction to becoming a true playoff team and a true threat that can make a deep playoff run. So now we're going to get on to the next question. This is with Kevin. So who is the biggest disappointment so far this year in the NFL?
The Eagles would love to see it. It's the 49ers. You're 3-4. Your whole team's hurt pretty much. It doesn't look too good. After last year going to the Super Bowl, it looks like they had their chances, and now it's blown up with Ayuk being out for the season with a torn ACL. You got your Greenlaw still coming back from last year's torn Achilles in the Super Bowl. You got Jawan Jennings was just hurt, and Debo was in the hospital. Kittle got hurt again for the 3rd time this season. So, yeah, if I had to go with the biggest disappointment, I would say the 49ers, even though there's definitely a lot of disappointment so far this year.
Absolutely. Definitely the 49ers, I would agree. big disappointment. Even with the injuries, you were probably expecting a little bit more from them, considering they've been in the NFC Championship game, I believe, 4 out of the last 5 years, been to 2 Super Bowls as well. So them sitting at 3-4, definitely not what you expected. So now we're going to go on to Tyler with our next question. What is the biggest change needed for the Phillies going forward?
One word, Juan Soto. That's 2 words, but it's one name. Juan Soto, open up the checkbook, bring him in. You have the connection with the bench coach or the hitting coach, Kevin Long. He played with Harper, Turner, Schwarber in Washington. You bring him in, you could change the trajectory for this team, and you put them right back in the driver's seat to compete with the Dodgers. It's as simple as that. So that's what I'm hoping for. Otherwise, we touched on earlier, look to move some of these pieces, Bohm and Stott, and some guys in the outfield like Marsh and Rojas, but I'm sticking with bringing in Juan Soto.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Phillies offseason there. And then finally, we're going to go to Kevin. The Sixers injuries, are we making too big a deal out of this because it's early, or is this a serious problem that we're facing right now?
No, it's definitely a serious problem. I mean, you got Embiid being investigated for it right now. So, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, right now the trajectory I would say is like a 5 seed or a 6 seed maybe, if the way they've been playing, or like if Embiid's not playing all the time. But I mean, you got to get that home court. You can't let the Knicks fans take over your home stadium again. So they got to. I mean, the injuries really aren't a big deal, but then at the same time they are. You got to see how the season starts, and then we'll get more into that, I guess.
Absolutely, I agree. It is early in the season, so you don't want to harp on it too much, but you definitely want to get those guys back and healthy as soon as possible. Unfortunately, though, that is all the time we have for today's episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. If you want more information, follow us on our socials at Sports Talk LTV on X and Instagram. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning into this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia, and we'll see you next week.